Hello, I'm very pleased to welcome you to a conversation with Sara Pantuliano, the chair of the Secretary General's Peacebuilding Fund Advisory Group. Sara, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's a pleasure.
Over the past couple of years, Sara has provided invaluable leadership to the advisory group of the fund, steering its efforts towards enhancing peacebuilding initiatives globally. Today, we have the opportunity to delve deeper into Sara's insights, experiences, and reflections on peacebuilding and the work of the Secretary General's Peacebuilding Fund. Sara, I have a few questions for you, if I may.
Fire on.
First of all, major global shocks have been challenging the credibility of international institutions. A growing number of people seem to question the raison d'être of the multilateral system and whether it's fit for purpose to achieve its core mandate on peace and security. As chair of the PBF advisory group for the past 2 years, you've undoubtedly encountered numerous challenges and celebrated many successes. Could you share with us some of the key highlights and achievements that you're particularly proud of during your time as chair?
Certainly, and there are some that I would have not expected, to be honest, when we started with the 7th advisory group. There are two I'm really proud of. The first one, of course, is that we have managed, despite the challenges of the multilateral context, to get agreement on the assessed contribution for the Peacebuilding Fund. When we embarked on upon this, trajectory, many thought we were deluded, that it was impossible to get the House, to agree to assess contribution for peacebuilding. But, it shows that multilateralism is still really important and agreement can be found. And I'm delighted because even though, we've only managed to get 50 million, let's face it, it's not the quantum leap that the Secretary General was hoping for and then asked for,
yes.
But still, it's a very important gesture. It's a very important symbol that peacebuilding needs to be supported through the core resources of the United Nations. And for me, that was really, a joint effort, of course, between your team and the advisory group, but something very important that reasserts the primacy of peace and peacebuilding.
Absolutely, and we had a lot of very strong member state support, some real leaders on the issue, and then the whole membership rallied behind them.
Yeah.
And I agree that it's been a singular achievement, $50 million additional per year, with the predictability of it every year in the coming 5 years, starting in 2025 and hopefully beyond. Really an achievement we couldn't have done without the advisory group. And your second big achievement?
My second big achievement has been the strengthening of the relationship with the Peacebuilding Commission. The relation has always been there. Previous chairs have met with the chair of the PBC, but last year we had the first full meeting of the whole advisory group and the whole Peacebuilding Commission. And, we've had dialogue. I have, attended retreats of the Peacebuilding Commissions. We have had members of the PBC coming on joint missions, of the donors to the Peacebuilding Fund, to countries that receive Peacebuilding Fund's resources. It's so important that this relationship is growing and is strengthening because, they are two fundamental pillars of the peacebuilding architecture of the United Nations, and this complementarity is instrumental, to the success of peacebuilding and the progress that we can make. So I'm really proud that we have strengthened this relationship, and of course there is, the review of the peacebuilding architecture coming up next year. Yeah. This is an important, moment to continue to further the strengthening of this relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Sara. And the Peacebuilding Commission is an intergovernmental body here at the United Nations of 31 member states, and it's not as well known as a Security Council, but it really does play a critical role in terms of accompanying member states who wish to engage with them in terms of the development and the realization of their peacebuilding priorities. And they are very interested, that membership, in having greater synergies and more collaboration with the Peacebuilding Fund. So I think that ongoing dialogue now that's only become stronger in the last few years between the Peacebuilding Fund's advisory group and the PBC, I think will only give us additional benefits. It will help, I think, to strengthen the entire UN peacebuilding architecture. So I certainly agree with you that that's a really important achievement of the advisory group. Let me try another question on you,
Sure.
Sara. Peace building, as you know, is an ever-continuing process. Peace does not just happen spontaneously, and it certainly doesn't always last, unless we continuously invest in it. Reflecting on your experience, what insights have you gained regarding the role of the Peace Building Fund? What unique strengths does it bring in your view?
So the fund was designed to be catalytic, so to try and inspire, energize, others, to work together, to put more resources on the table, to really be a connector between different entities of the wider system. The fund was also designed to be flexible, to be innovative, but I think that catalytic element for me is so critical and so unique. Many out there often don't understand that the PBF is not an agency, it's not a fund, it's not a program, it's not a separate entity of the UN. It's really an instrument that can bring different parts of the UN family and the wider peace building community together. And I think this is the unique strength of the UN Peace Building Fund. It's the ability to connect. The UN Secretary General calls it the hinge. We joke about, the word, but it really is this, connecting element that can bring together different parts of all the actors that are really focused on advancing peace. And it has a particular role in supporting local peace builders, supporting young people, supporting women peace builders. Now, I think we could do a lot more in that respect, and that's something that I hope the 8th advisory group will further, together with the team. But it does provide resources in countries that are used, to support local civil society organizations focused on peace building, brings together the UN family together with, national structures, and of course, has the primacy of the national ownership at the center of what it does. All of those things are really, really important because it means that it is valued in country, and I've seen that firsthand in Mauritania. When we visited
we were
together.
yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Last year,
how important it is in so many parts where the resources are not available, to support small but critical, transformational interventions. To invest in prevention, which is something that the fund does a lot, and we know how hard it is to find resources for prevention, and yet how fundamental prevention is in so many contexts. I think that the fund has a really unique role, and I just hope that more resources can be made available, to continue to play this transformative role.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I do hope that those who could support the fund more and bring in more resources are hearing you right now about the need to grow out the fund. You know that we're at one of our lowest liquidity levels in years, and yet the demand for support from the Peacebuilding Fund continues to grow, not only from countries at the moment actively in conflict situations, but as you were saying, countries that wish to have PBF support in a preventive mode, in order to strengthen their institutions, their processes, their civil society, their institutions, in order to make sure that they are able to weather the storms that all countries go through when it comes to all of the threats that can be faced in terms of maintaining and sustaining peace.
And perhaps to add, again, we saw that in Mauritania, this particular focus on the youth, but also the priority that the fund has on cross-border initiatives. That is very difficult for the UN family to work cross-border. It's very difficult to have initiatives also with other stakeholders that work across borders, and yet in so many contexts, the challenges are, cross-border. They don't stop within the national borders, and so having resources that can bring together sort of players within a specific region, the Sahel being one of them, but obviously many others, is so important.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. And we also pride ourselves on the fund being a very agile instrument, risk tolerant, in addition to having that integrator effect across the UN system, where a number of agencies, funds and programs usually work hand in glove on a particular initiative with local and national actors, of course, and all based on national ownership. So we are quite proud of the fund indeed. And I think the support that we provide in terms of support for inclusion, to make sure that all sectors of society are fully included in building and sustaining peace in their societies, is another extremely important feature. You mentioned it, gender equality and women's empowerment. We are one of the champions in the UN system, where last year 47% of the resources went to gender equality, women's empowerment. Also, a lot of work in supporting youth empowerment, youth inclusion in peace building and in decision making on peace efforts. And we hope to really continue that very strongly in future as well. So let me give you another question. Your tenure on the advisory group emphasized the importance of understanding peace-building impact. Impact is also the theme of this year's Secretary General's report on peacebuilding and will inform Member States' review of the UN peacebuilding architecture, which you mentioned a few moments ago. So what are your thoughts on impact? How do we get better at showing the results and impact of peacebuilding? Why is it so important?
Well, this is a shared obsession. I know we're all really focused on demonstrating impact. And I have been a bit of a thorn in the side since, sitting on the 6th advisory group about not just focusing on bringing more money, but demonstrating the value of that money, really focusing on the impact. It's really hard to demonstrate impact of peace building. This is not unique to the fund. It's very difficult to demonstrate that attribution, particularly when this is in a preventative, space, demonstrating that something hasn't happened because of your intervention. And yet there has been so much analysis, so much learning about what really can contribute, to preventing, violence and conflict, build peace. That I think we've got enough learning. And the Peacebuilding Fund does something that it's really, really useful, which is the thematic reviews. They're incredibly well done. They're very deep. They're very well-established methodologies. They're rich in learning. And I think it's something that can help, sort of the wider peacebuilding community get better at learning the lessons and learning, what works and doesn't work. Of course, that varies by context, but still, kind of grosso modo, helps understanding, how we can operate better. But nobody's going to read very long and detailed reports. What we need to do is tell the story better. It's really being able to capture the impact that we are monitoring and evaluating very carefully.
Evidence-based, of
exactly,
course.
It is evidence-based, but knowledge is consumed very differently today. People don't read long reports. They don't appreciate, some of the very detailed methodological points. So we need to build a narrative that demonstrates the power, the impact of what the fund is supporting, and persuade donors that there is value in investing in peace. That is so fundamental, and help actually the wider peace building community to tell the story too, because it's a shared concern, it's a shared problem.
And the way we're also looking at impact and looking at our results and how we got there. And when I say we, it's a broad we, as you say. It's not just the Peacebuilding Fund, it's our implementing partners, it's across the board, UN partners, local NGOs, governments, and so forth. But also, we feel very strongly that we need to invest in doing a better job at this as a learning tool, because we need to know what has worked well and why, what worked less well and why, and learn from that. So yes, we're both very obsessed with that, I know. And in a few moments, we'll go back to the advisory group and talk about where we are with the Peacebuilding Impact Hub that PBSO, along with the rest of the system, launched in December of last year, which I hope will be a very good tool for us to collectively, at the UN, but also beyond with our other partners, to understand better, as difficult as it is, which you mentioned, how we can better identify, evaluate, and learn from our results and better communicate them. So we will keep in touch on that, Sara.
Definitely.
No matter where you go. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you one final question. It's a very important question. Lastly, looking ahead, as you are on the verge of ending your term as our illustrious chair of the advisory group, the 7th advisory group of the Peacebuilding Fund, I would like to know what guidance you would offer to the incoming chair of the PBF advisory group.
Well, first of all, the way the advisory group works is 5 of the members of the current advisory group, the 7th advisory group, will stay with the 8th advisory group. So the chair will find some incredibly knowledgeable, formidably passionate colleagues, and so harness, the energy, the commitment, the wisdom of the colleagues that come from the 7th advisory group, and of course the new colleagues that will be added to the advisory group. It's a privilege, really, to be the chair of the advisory group to the Peace Building Fund, because it really draws on some fantastic resources. But I would say something that the 7th advisory group really tried to emphasize during its mandate was the importance of creating a stronger public narrative around the importance of peace, bringing the primacy of peace, back to the center of public discourse, inspire the youth the same way they are inspired by, climate activism. And we were reflecting just yesterday that actually this has happened despite, us thinking that maybe it would be very difficult. What we're seeing happening around us in the campuses here in the US, beyond in Europe increasingly, is that the youth are actually campaigning for peace, for a peaceful and just world. And I think it's really, really important that we try and support and harness that energy that we're seeing around peace, this movement for peace, that the UN doesn't miss this important moment and doesn't, is not felt as detached from what is happening out there. This is the fund of the UN Secretary General. The ASG has demonstrated enormous leadership at the moment, really bringing the values of the Charter, the normative frameworks at the heart of what is happening internationally around us. So I think it would be important for the chair of the advisory group to help the fund, the ASG, as we go towards the summit of the future. We develop the pacts of the future, and then, sort of going forward also towards the peace building architecture, to connect these more internal processes of the UN to what is happening out there, and really reassert the importance, the value of the peace building instruments of the UN, of the peace building centrality of the UN, connected to what is happening out there in terms of this movement for peace that we are seeing.
Yeah, Sara, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we've never perhaps needed peace more than we do now when we look around the world. And I certainly am with you. I have talked for many years about the need to really work towards building a constituency for peace as broad as possible. And I think, as you said, like on climate change, I think young people can really lead the way. So let's hope that we can encourage that, engage with the vigor of youth and those who are more and more committed to having a more peaceful, tolerant, inclusive, and prosperous world. So let me thank you, Sara, for agreeing to do this little chat with me. And I have to say, you've been a fantastic chair and a fantastic advisory group member. We have been so lucky to have you. And despite the fact that in not too long, you will be leaving the advisory group, don't worry, we are going to continue to pick your brain and call you and involve you. And it's just been such a pleasure to work with you, and that will continue, I hope.
It's been reciprocal. It's
so
been
much.
fantastic working with you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for the leadership you've provided to the fund and the whole PBSO, and just personally in terms of the work that we've done together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear.
Thanks.